This happened about 4 years ago. I was working in a small city in the UK called Gloucester. Although the countryside is very pretty, there's no nightlife outside of 1 or 2 straight clubs. By the way, I'm gay. As a result, almost every Friday after work, I'd take the train to Birmingham and spend the weekend with my best friend who worked there. As I had broken up with my boyfriend and her with her girlfriend, we had a habit of spending our weekends drinking, dancing, and hooking up with people, then regretting it the next day over a Chinese buffet. Anyway, through this, I got to meet some friends and some guys who I could potentially be into dating. One of the guys asked me in the middle of the week if I'd like to hang out and maybe get a drink. I thought sure, why not? I can take the train after work and either take the last train back, or if things go well, take an early train in the morning to get to the office before 9. Anyway, we ended up getting super drunk and I agreed to spend the night with him. Because he lived with his parents quite away from the city center and I absolutely had to catch a train the next day, we thought we'd book a hotel for the night. This is where things get strange. After we leave the bar, there are taxis outside. Now looking back, this is a red flag because taxis are absolutely not allowed to park outside this place as it's on a main road. But we were too drunk to realize, and to be honest, quite horny, so we just got in the first one we saw and gave the male driver directions. The driver himself was a little heavyset, South Asian appearance, but British accent in his mid-late 30s. Almost immediately, he began asking us strange questions, like questions about gay sex, what we would be doing with each other, that kind of thing. I thought he was being really unprofessional, and the other guy was actively telling him it's not appropriate at all to ask these kinds of questions. Yet he still persisted. He also insisted that he had a girlfriend and that he doesn't get gay people. I'm fairly slim, so I think he could overpower me. This is important for later. We drove around for a while and he still didn't find the place, and I finally complained and asked what the problem was. He said maybe he got the wrong address and asked me specifically to get in the front and enter the address in his GPS. Naturally, like an absolute idiot, I decided to do what he said. Within 5 minutes, we'd arrived at the hotel. The guy got out of the back and closed the door, and I was trying to find my wallet when the taxi driver started to drive away, with me still in the car. I asked him what he was doing, and all he said was, "Just turning around." But at the end of the road, he started to drive into an area with very few people, just lots of wide, empty roads, little lighting, old and factory-style buildings. At this point, I realized that something was very wrong. I demanded that he take me back to the hotel, but he just smiled and started to ask very sexual and private questions. Sexual positions, noises I make, that kind of thing. I was refusing to answer and just asked why he wanted to know. He took my hand and put it on his crotch and said, "What do you think of this?" And I was horrified. I wanted to get out and run, but I didn't know that part of the city very well. I figured he'd just follow me anyway. He then proceeded to undo his jeans and show me his erect cock, using his arm to force my hand to touch it, asking me to play with it, and if I was lucky I'd get the chance to sit on it. Finally, at this point, my drunken self moped out of the car and ran as fast as I could in the direction we had come from. The driver didn't follow me, and eventually I found the hotel about 15 minutes later. I left my suit jacket in the car as well, which I was devastated about. I loved that dark navy blue suit. Because I ran away, I didn't look at the license plate, so I literally couldn't do a thing. I told the police what he looked like, and told the bar staff the next time I went about the illegal taxis who were parking outside. I was kind of at a loss for what else to do. Since then, I actually live in a different country, not because of the accident, and when I go back, I still go to that bar. I've never seen a taxi outside there again. I'm not totally sure what this guy's endgame was. What if the taxi door was locked? What if he was more adamant and was forceful in making me stay or comply? He could probably have used his physical strength to overpower me. He said he didn't understand gay people. Was this some kind of trick? Or plan where after he would hurt me? Looking back, it's kind of interesting because we always say that girls should never get in non-certified taxis or should be more careful in general. But this shows that this kind of stuff can happen to guys as well. This happened 4 years ago when I was in the 8th grade and my little brother was in 4th grade. Back then, my brother and I would walk to school together every day. This started in, from what I recall, April. And of course, this involves a fucking white van. Me and my brother were off to school, walking down a relatively busy street, and the last street before the street the school is on. Always cars going up and down, with houses on both sides of the street, and always lots of kids and their parents walking to the school. I noticed the white van. It immediately made me skeptical. It was driving down the road when I turned around to see what the van was being driven by. And when it drove towards us, it slowed down a little bit right beside us, then sped off. The same thing happened on the way to school the next 3 days. I started to get kind of pissed at this guy. It's now Friday, before the weekend. I'm walking to school with my brother. My little brother gets ahead of me because I had to tie my shoe, and what do you know? The white van pulls up and slows down right beside my little brother. I immediately look at the license plate as I was getting prepared for the van to show up. I get the license plate number on my phone so I won't lose it. The van speeds off, again. This really started to creep me out like 8 more times than it did before. I didn't let my brother out of my sight the rest of the walk there, and asked him if he noticed the van was always slowing down beside him, and he said, yeah, it's kinda weird. I guess at his age, he didn't know the gravity of the situation we were in. After school the same day, I'm walking home with 3 of my other friends, and my little brother is about 15 feet ahead of us. My friends and I are just talking about stupid shit, and I notice the white van drive by. I take a glance at the license plate, same one as earlier. I immediately call my brother's name. Noah, come here and walk with us. He turns around, walks with me and my friends. I told them the white van just drove by, so watch out if you see it. I told my friends all about this fucking creepy white van, and my friend Troy says that he has my back no matter what. We go through the weekend without anything happening with the white van, so I suppose he doesn't know where we live. It's now Monday morning, and neither of us see a white van. I'm thinking to myself that maybe the guy has finally stopped for the love of all that is holy. I'm thinking to myself that maybe the guy has finally stopped for the love of all that is holy. Until we get to the school and I see the van parked on the other side of the street. My little brother didn't notice and I didn't tell him because I didn't want to make him scared. Now I'm just really pissed. He has the nerve to creep up on my little brother like that, and now fucking creep on him at our fucking school? I immediately go to my friend Troy and my other friend Brady and ask them if they remember the white van. They say yes, and I tell them that it's parked right down the street. I ask them to come with me to confront this guy. They both agreed. We walked up to the white van and Troy knocked on its window and the man rolled it down. He's wearing a cap, sunglasses, and has a gray beard, breathing really heavily for some reason. I immediately got some really creepy vibes from this guy. I decided to take out my house key and wrap the lanyard around my hand and put the key between my pointer finger and middle finger, just in case something happens. Troy asked him in these exact words in a pretty intimidating voice. Would you like to explain why you're following this guy and his little brother to school every day? The man immediately turns on his truck and drives off. He doesn't even say a word. I started to yell as he drove off. When we got back to school, I told my teacher about the van, and he says he will keep watch every morning. We didn't see the van the rest of the day. The next day, I arrive at school with my little brother and notice again that the white van is there. As I walk up to my teacher, he asked me if that's the van I was talking about. I said yes, and the school immediately called the police. The school is basically in a court, so there's only one way to go out through vehicle transportation, so there was nowhere for the guy to go. The police confront him, and guess what? We never saw that guy again. The police told my mom, and she got extremely mad at me for not telling her in the first place. I felt like such an idiot for not calling the police or telling someone else earlier, as it would have taken care of the situation much sooner. But I'm happy he got taken care of, because I don't know what I would do if my little brother had got taken away by some pedophile, and I can't think about what could have happened to him, and I can't think about what would have happened to him if he'd been taken. I also have my friends to thank for at least trying to help. Me, Troy, and Brady are still best buds, and we still hang out a lot. I hope for his sake that I never see that prick ever again. Because if I do, there's no telling what I'm gonna do to him. So here's my background. I'm a 23-year-old female security guard at a retirement community. My position consists of sitting in the guardhouse and checking in visitors and contractor vehicles. Residents come in through a separate traffic lane that is serviced automatically. Santa Creeper is what I personally call this guy in my head, because I don't know his name and he looks exactly like what you'd expect Santa to look like. Forever jolly, white beard, and chubby, except he likes to wear Hawaiian shirts and drives a bright red car. When I first started this job a little over 6 months ago, I mostly worked shifts where I was by myself for hours at a time. I was also a lot more naive. Santa Creeper is a resident, and I knew this because he would drive through the resident lane to see who was in the guardhouse, leave through the exit, and come back through the visitor's lane to talk to me. To be honest, I liked talking to him. He was nice, and I don't get a lot of attention from people. Our talks only lasted a couple of minutes, and there wasn't any important information exchanged, but it was nice. About a month and a half into my job, I had a shift with my supervisor. We got along, so we were talking about the people that came through all the time, which ones we liked and which were assholes, that kind of thing. So I mentioned the Santa Creeper. I offhandedly said that he seems like a nice person, and my supervisor gets this look on his face. He told me how this guy has a habit of harassing female security guards and trying to lure them into his house. He tells me some of the things he has said, and I'm revolted. I completely trust my supervisor, so I believe him, and decide to distance myself from Santa Creeper. Santa Creeper gets to the point after the first couple times I brush him off, and he stops seeing me after a couple of weeks. I didn't think he would come back. I was wrong. 3 weeks later, he pulls up and starts talking to me. I didn't notice it was him because he decided to drive a different vehicle from usual, and it was dark out. He starts talking to me about a job at his house. I ask him what the job is, and he just says, "Oh, you'll see." And he winks at me. He then insists that I come with him right now, so he can show me. I refuse, saying I can't leave my post, and he can see that I won't be persuaded, so he leaves pretty easily. About a week later, I see him again. He winks at me and says, "A sweet first, sweetie," and gives me a Hershey kiss. I'm instantly suspicious, but I say thank you, and he leaves. I open it, and it doesn't look right, so I threw it away. I saw him drive by in the residence lane a few times that night. He waves at me each time. A few weeks later, he comes by and his wife is in the car with him. He tries to make conversation with me, saying how pretty I am and how lucky my boyfriend must be. His wife is just staring straight ahead, not reacting at all. He left when a car pulled up behind him. It was pretty bizarre. I see him again a few days later and he gives me another Hershey's kiss, this time saying, "You look like you can use some sugar." He winks before driving away. I was too busy to watch to see if his car drove past again. I didn't bother opening it. I just tossed it out as soon as he was out of sight. I have another shift with my supervisor and I tell him what's going on. He looks pissed and he says that he's going to have words with Santa Creeper. Later that day, he sees him drive up, tells him to go in the back and talks with him. I didn't hear what they said, but I do know that I didn't see Santa Creeper come by again until after that supervisor got fired. With the new supervisor, I was assigned to the day shift, so when I see Santa Creeper, he has to behave, because there's always another guard on duty. I don't typically deal with him either, I let the other guard do it. I strongly dislike my new supervisor. He's aggressively unintelligent and a kiss ass. And I've grown to hate the company too. Partly because of the way they fired my previous supervisor and the job itself, so I'll be leaving mid-June for a new job. Well, I pull up today to start my shift, and I see Santa Creeper and the current supervisor talking. Santa Creeper pulls away before I park my car. I'm instantly suspicious, so I ask my supervisor what they talked about. My supervisor, who is aware of the problems I've had with this guy, turns to me and cheerfully says, "He heard you were leaving and wanted to know when." I asked my supervisor if he told him, and he asked, "Was that not okay?" I'm not too concerned about what that Santa Creeper might do because I'm never alone now. I've been put on day shift and I park right where I can watch my car. But I'm staying vigilant, and if you guys have any ideas, let me know. I'm a 24-year-old Canadian female, and this happened when I was about 15 years old. I still remember it like it was yesterday. Living in a suburban neighborhood, taking the city bus was something I did every day. To go to school, to hang out with friends, you get the picture. Anyways, this one night, I was coming back from this place they called the Teen Zone, which was a little hangout for young teens. They had babyfoot music, pool tables, and you could purchase junk food such as chips, chocolate, and whatever else. So this place closes around 11 p.m. My house was about a 20-minute walk from the Teen Zone. I decided to take the bus since it would be quicker. I was alone, it was pretty dark, but I wasn't really scared knowing it had always been a safe part of town. I got off the bus and started to walk home, which was only a block away. There was a car driving very slowly on the opposite side of the street. I ignored it. A couple seconds later, I heard the car doing a U-turn. I heard the motors roaring, getting louder and louder. The car is now right beside me and going the same speed I am. It's basically following my footsteps. I decide not to look right away as I feel my heart pounding in my chest. I felt so nervous, I was about to jump out of my skin. I finally decided to take a look to see who the person was and what the hell they want. At first, all I can see is the teenager's window is open, but it's hard to see the face inside. After a couple seconds, I can finally see. The driver, who's alone, is a man of about 45 to 50 years, and he's masturbating while watching me. One hand on his dick that's all the way out, and one hand on the steering wheel. The only thing that came out of my mouth was very loud, "Ugh," and a disgusted face. I was so confused, and I didn't know what to do. Should I run? If I do, he'll catch me. I'm on foot and he has a car. I opted to keep walking and look straight in front of me while putting my left hand on the left side of my face to block the side view I had of him. He kept following me for a good minute or two. He then decided to press on the gas and leave. And this was very traumatic, but thank God he didn't kidnap me or something. Just to make things worse, a year later, I went shopping with a girlfriend, and as we're talking in the parking lot towards the mall, we see a guy parked in a more secluded area, and he's looking straight at us. We could see one arm moving quickly, so we pretty much knew what he was up to. We reacted loudly and yelled that he was disgusting. I don't know if he heard us, but he just kept staring and smiling at us while masturbating. I think there are way more pedophiles than we actually believe. This only happened a few months ago. I'm 20 and I look around my age. A little backstory first, me and my boyfriend met in college and have been dating ever since. We did move back home after college ended though, so we could save up some money and get a job so we could move in together. This means that we have to travel an hour and a half just to see each other. Although I usually have to get a second bus because the bus takes me to the city and he lives further out. Once, we had caught the bus to take us into the city so I could go home that day, and he was seeing me off there before going shopping. I should mention, the bus takes about 40 minutes, but traffic was really bad due to roadworks. So the journey took about an hour that day. We had gone to the back of the bus and sat down and started talking. We were facing opposite each other. The bus was fairly busy, and there was a man also sitting in the back of the bus, but I initially paid him no attention. After a while of talking and casually glancing around, I began to feel unnerved, and like something wasn't right. After looking around, I noticed the man at the back of the bus with us quickly glancing away, as if he had got caught in staring. Fine, I mean, we all do it accidentally without realizing. However, after a few more occasions like that, he stopped looking away. I was chilled to my core and I felt my anxiety skyrocket. Whenever I looked at him, he wouldn't look away at all. I could feel him staring no matter what I did. At first I thought it was because me and my boyfriend were talking too loud, but I'm not stupid. I knew it wasn't that when I tried quieting down and he still didn't look away. I think my boyfriend noticed at some point that I was gradually getting quieter and looking more nervous, and I think he caught on. I felt I couldn't say anything to my boyfriend because the guy was right there and clearly listening to our conversation. I'm quite a socially anxious person and I hate being rude. By the time the bus pulled into the city, I was completely quiet and had angled myself towards the window, away from that guy. I didn't know what to say or do. I do know that my boyfriend pulled me off that bus pretty quickly after it stopped, but I pulled him aside once we were off so that the man would be ahead of us. I was shaking and terrified and angry that I didn't know how to handle the situation. But I do know the looks he was giving me, or rather stares, were very intense and sent chills down my spine. I hate to think what would have happened had I been alone. Two years ago, I was a single mom getting my house ready to move in while my girls, 8 and 9 at the time, were with their father. I had been married to an emotionally abusive alcoholic for about 5.5 years before this and was paranoid and jumpy already. It was about 8 or so at night, while I was chalking the holes in the walls so I could get them ready for paint, when a man rolls up on his bicycle and knocks on my door. He saw me inside because there were no blinds or curtains on the windows. Let me back up for a second. We live in a small town in the south where people wave at each other, and if you dial a wrong number, you can still have a friendly conversation with the stranger on the other end of the line. So even though I was on edge, I still went to the door because my past wasn't this guy's fault, right? Anyway, he said he noticed we were working on the house. I guess he just assumed there was a we, and said he had been out of work since Christmas. He wanted to know if we needed any help with the inside or the lawn or anything else. I got a little bad feeling around him, and even though I did need someone to mow the lawn, I told him no thank you. He said, "Okay, thanks anyway." As I was shutting the door, he said, By the way, you're really pretty." I did my Chandler from Friends laugh and said, "Okay, thanks," and shut the door. I went back to chalking, hands shaking, and watched him ride his bike away from my house. Now, I'm one to take a compliment, but that one was off. After I knew he was gone, I ran out to my car and got my 380 just to feel safe. It helped a little, but I still wanted to get out of there. So I loaded up and went to my friend's house where I had been staying since my husband and I had split up. Fast forward to Mother's Day weekend. My girls and I were settling into the house, and my mom, who lives 4 hours away, had come to spend the weekend with us. It was about 9:30, Saturday night, and the friend I had lived with for the last 7 months had stopped by to see us. Someone rings the doorbell. I'm guessing I thought it was my friend's daughter playing on the front porch, so I opened the door only to see the bicycle guy standing there. He says he's sorry for the time, but he noticed my lawn needed to be mowed and wanted to know if he could do it. I told him it's too late to be coming to my door, and before I could tell him to leave, my mom pops up behind me. Now, my mom and I are the same size, 5'1"-ish. We could intimidate puppies, but who wants to do that? She starts somewhat scolding him because, well, that's my mom. She then gets his name and number written down and tells him if we're interested, we'd call him. It was unsettling, but I felt safer with my mom there. I even felt safe after she left on Monday because I thought he may have gotten the message. The Friday after Mother's Day, I was sad and heading home alone because my daughters were with their father that weekend. I pull up to my house and notice a Sonic cup on my table that's on the porch. I then see a piece of paper stuck in my door. I read it and it says, "This is so-and-so, bicycle guy, and I was supposed to mow your lawn. I'll come back later." It was then that I turned around and noticed my front yard had been mowed. I went in my house and looked out my kitchen window just to see that the backyard had also been mowed. What the hell? I thought to myself. I did not ask anyone to mow my lawn, and I did not have the money to pay anyone. And this was an especially horrible time since I had no phone book and no data left on my phone, so I couldn't look up the police station's number, and I knew calling 911 was overreacting. I mean, all he did was mow the lawn, but still. He said in the note that he would be back, and I had no money to pay this guy, and I knew that was why he said he would come back. I called my friend I lived with before, and she gave me the police station's number and told me to come stay with her if I wanted. I told her I might, even though I was upset and scared. I was also pissed. How dare this guy? I didn't owe him a damn thing, and I'm not leaving my house. So I call and talk to the dispatcher, and she tells me that she's sending out a deputy and everything's gonna be okay. I only had to wait about 10 minutes, and the deputy turned out to be a man I go to church with. I explained everything from the first time he stopped by to showing them the note that was on my front door. Turns out that he knows the guy, and he's had problems with him before. He walked all around the house with me, inside and out, checking all the doors and windows. Nothing had been disturbed. He then had me sign a protective order form and says he'll take it to the guy to sign if he sets foot on my property ever again, then he'll be arrested. Before the deputy left, he noticed I had my boxes of bullets on my living room floor for my .380, and he asked if I had a gun, and if I knew how to use it. I told him I did, and he said, "Good, keep it close." He then asked me if I had any beer, and I told him that I had a couple, and he said, "Good, drink one, but make sure you can still operate your firearm." I knew he was trying to make me feel better, and it worked. A couple months had gone by before the deputy stopped by again. He asked if he could ask me a few more questions, and I told him of course. He asked if that guy had ever tried to force himself on me or into my house. I told him no. He asked if I was sure and wanted me to know I could tell him and not be scared. I told him that the man didn't, and then asked if I could know why he was asking me that. He said that the guy had been arrested a week or so prior for sexual assault of a minor. He had been going door to door looking for work and forced himself into a home and sexually assaulted a minor. He told me he wanted to find any other victims so he could put him away for a long time. That was 2 years ago, and last I heard, he was still locked up. I've since met an amazing, non-alcoholic, sweet man that my girls adore, and I never feel sad, lonely, or scared anymore.